So I was appointed back in July 2014. Obviously been on an interim basis 6 months prior to that, but on a full-time basis I was appointed at that date. And then I had a lot of passion, I had a lot of ideas. I knew that over here in history we'd probably underachieved, we hadn't been focused. I didn't think we had the right mentality as an organisation. I didn't think we were exploiting our opportunities enough. And so, but I had all these ideas, but I'll be honest with you, I didn't know how to implement them. I'd never been a chief exec before. I didn't know what a good chief exec looked like. So I started thinking, well, how can I get this passion and these ideas into a delivery model? So I thought, well, we need to go through some sort of transformation. And through a contact, I contacted a guy called Rich Sparks, who came in and acted as a transformation director. He liked what I was saying and the vision I had in my mind for what Severn Vale could be, and he helped me articulate it into how we could get that into a delivery model. At the same time, or just after I was appointed, we also had a new chair appointed. A previous chair had been in place for 10 years and moved on, and I was excited when I saw the CV of the potential candidates, and RNGC, Mark Davis and his colleagues and myself sat and went through the interviews. I wasn't part of the appointment process, but I was asked for my opinions, and based on Lawrence's CV, I was delighted when we appointed Lawrence James as chair. And at that point we thought, oh, okay, we're on the upward curve. Unfortunately, we slipped up in one particular area, and it resulted in us getting a downgrade from top rating G1 down to G2. Now that happened to be in the area of gas at that time. However, that was symptomatic of what the organisation was failing on in a number of areas around governance. So it wasn't just about fixing that issue, it was about fixing quite a few issues around governance. Indeed, we had to put a programme together of what needed addressing. And so that was a journey that has been going on for the last couple of years. Rich Sparks helped us introduce an idea called sprints, agile working, getting collaboration across the organisation. A number of areas were identified, 9 areas were identified that needed to be addressed quite quickly in terms of improving operations, making us more efficient. And there was a method where we looked at the as is, what was the state of play, and designed a to-be, what world we'd like to see, and then worked out a way of getting there. It involved around 7 or 8 people on each group. It brought in about 80 odd staff in the organisation of the full complement, and they were very willing to help. They had some great ideas, and the sprints were kicked off. That sort of led us into thinking, well, actually we haven't got a corporate plan at this point. So we started kicking some ideas around what that might look like. But Rich Sparks was concerned that, he said, you've got to go through a massive change, and he said, you're not going to do it with the current culture you've got. You've got a low will organisation. He said, you look around, he said, there are a few people that are pushing themselves to the limits, and other people who are just coasting. He said, you need high will. He said, yes, you need high skill, but he said, if you're working with low will, you've got no chance. So through a contact of his, we got a consultant, Shirley Blenkinsop, to help us with the cultural side of things, developing the people skills, developing how we operate, how we interact together. So Shirley came to us just at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, and the first part of that was to do a culture survey to find out where we were at, the as is. And from that, we then started thinking, well, okay, these are the areas we need addressing. We also went through the thing, well, actually, you haven't got a vision in the organisation. Tim, what's your vision? And so I found that very difficult to articulate initially. Shirley then gave me a parallel, which we talked about, and I came up with some clear ideas of what the vision was, of where I wanted to get us to, which I could articulate. Ironically, the part of that Shirley's work was also working with the rest of the managers to ask them what they thought the vision should be. And amazingly, pleasingly, there was a lot of similarities around that. So that was brought together. But what it identified And there was a couple of bits of work within the cultural change where we assessed everybody's personality profile, their MBTI, how they heard information, how they gave information, whether they were introvert, extrovert, all the different things that play into people's interaction with others. And we realised through those processes that we didn't understand what the values were in the organisation. We didn't have anything that underpinned how we behaved or what our approach was. And so we got the staff together as one of these sprints and actually created some values which the board signed off in February the 25th, 2015. And from that we then had something to operate around. So yes, we're a caring organisation. That's what we do. That's what we've always done. That's what we always did in the years prior to when I was appointed. So caring was always going to be there. But actually we weren't, a bit like the whole housing sector, very creative. So we thought, well, okay, let's be a bit more innovative. We need to come up with some different solutions. We can't keep doing the same old. So creative was put in there. I'm very, to me, personally, it's all about trust. And if we can't trust what people are doing and trust people to go in and do things once it's been agreed the what, I don't need to get involved in the how, but I have to have people that work with me that I can trust and they trust me. So trustworthy was another one, as was obviously being professional. We have to be professional in what we do. And of course, with all this, we have to be purposeful. If we don't have a purpose, then what is the point of going through any of this? Purposeful has to be behind all of it. So it was great that everybody tied into that, and the board bought into that and supported that, which was great. And there was one or two little projects going on within the cultural change process. So, for example, we did some internal training, or Shirley trained some people who were recognised as having some extra skill sets that they didn't even realise they had themselves. So to be change agents within the organisation, and what that looked for to help us across the board with the transformation journey. Having gone through all that, by February 2015 we'd actually got a corporate plan, a first corporate plan that we were able to produce, that gave some guidance across the organisation as to what our strategic ambitions were. But of course we didn't have a permanent leadership team in place. What we'd had was some of the previous staff that had helped us through the process as an interim leadership team, but actually, probably on reflection, didn't have all the skills necessary to take us forward on a leadership basis. So we had to go through a major recruitment process of pulling together a directors team from scratch, effectively, and that was over a period of 4 months. Myself and the chair went through about 110 interviews. It was quite a lengthy process, but we managed to make sure we got the right type of people in terms of their personality profile, but also the right skills into the organisation. And the last appointment within that team was Faye Shanahan, our Customer and Communities Director, and that was in July 2015. So that was when the team was finally together. And then Mr. Osborne decided he was going to change Housing Association's world, and a week after Faye started, he said, actually, I'm taking your income away, which in our case was about £4 million of a £20 million income budget in year 4 of the business plan. Changed the concept of what we could and couldn't do as an organisation completely. So we were on an upward curve at that point. We got a new team, we got the will in the organisation improved, we got people working together, the sprints had worked well up to that point, and we expected our journey to carry on upward and onward. Unfortunately, with the rent cut, we had to take a step back. The good thing was that the will we built up in the organisation and the collaboration we'd got is when we thought, well, how are we going to deal with this 4 million deficit? We got all the staff together, and I mean all the staff, and came up 531 ideas between them. Some wacky ideas, some great ideas, some we've implemented, some we haven't, some we will in the future. But actually, the hell of a lot of ideas to look at that we could make savings, improve our income levels across the organisation to make us more sustainable going forward. Well, we came up with a revised corporate plan which involved some of these ideas, but it meant that we never reached the peak that we were aiming for. At that point, we'd been doing the cultural change programs. So managing by values was the first part of the program. Phase 2 was about this one team, and there were some streams around that about team effectiveness management, meetings management, and getting effective meetings through the attended in the organisation. So we got some good outcomes from them in terms of what good leadership looked like. And we went through a series of programs, and they ran up to the end of 2015. And at that point, we then did some 360 reviews of the directors team, or of the exec team. So that was the directors plus the 3 executive managers. Find out where people were at and how they were seen by their colleagues. And that showed us that actually we still had a long way to go in terms of build. People had hit the ground running in terms of what needed doing, dealing with some of the governance issues, looking at what needed to be done in housing, what needed to be done in asset management. But actually in terms of personal development, the cultural side of things, there was still a lot of work to do. And there were some difficult messages in there for individuals, myself included, but you take it on the chin. And if you're open-minded and trust that people are being objective when they give those views, then that's an opportunity for a build. At that point, we would have gone into what I call phase 3. What we're talking about now is the phase 3 of the cultural change. But unfortunately, I managed to go and get ill, and from my perspective, had to drop out of the business for a while. At the same time that happened, Lawrence was instigating a board development program that started back in January 2016 to try and help close the gap between where the board, to make an effective board, to make sure the leadership team, the directors, were effective and the interaction between the two was effective, making sure the organisation was accountable through the organisation, so that we delivered the corporate plan. Julie stepped up to the plate in terms of covering for me whilst I was off poorly, obviously covering the financial role as well as the chief exec's role in my absence. And in all honesty, something had to give. Unfortunately, the cultural development side of things just took a little bit of a backseat at that point. But during that time, we were appointing, because we'd gone through and realised we hadn't necessarily got all the skills we needed, a governance team to help deal with making sure the organisation was sustainable going forward in terms of its governance. Faye had looked at what we had in the Customer and Communities team and restructured that. And because of the rent cut, we had to do a different approach, for example, to how we interact with communities. So we now got a grants officer generating loads of money and opportunities for the area, the communities we serve, but actually Seven Vale isn't there doing it, it's just acting as an enabler, so that's much more efficient and effective. And we've gone to generic housing working rather than specialists, so there's quite a few efficiencies been brought out there. I then came back to work, took a little bit of time to get back into the swing of things, but actually started initiating, getting this cultural journey back on track. What was pleasing, quite ironic really, the chief exec's off sick and we get a G1 back. I hope there's no messages in there. But actually that was the result of a heck of a lot of work, hard work, to get us to the point of G1, which was great. So that gives us a good starting point. Mike had already identified that he hadn't got the right skills in his team, so he's been going through a restructure just more recently. So we've got quite a few staffing restructures going on and onboarding people. And as a result of trying to reinstigate the cultural journey, the first part of that process was to do some focus interviews. And we did that across the management team. And so that was 26 people were interviewed and asked their thoughts about how effective we were, the messages coming out that we need to do some work on effective leadership, about roles and responsibilities. We've got to get the communication improved. We definitely need openness and trust. I think coming from these interviews, came through loud and clear that people felt able, when asked, and it wasn't asked overtly at the start of the interviews, but actually it was dropped into the middle of the interviews, how open do you feel about how able do you feel about being open in this focus interview. Well, pleasingly for me, without exception, they all said open. Yeah, they can say what they want, and that's great. And as long as they're respectful in the way they do it, which they have been, then we get some good information and good quality information. So that's enabled us to form a programme to take the phase 3 forward. And only last week, one of the things coming out of the focus interviews was, we want some vision. We want more clarity around the vision. So back here, we'd said that part of this visioning was to be the leading housing provider in Gloucestershire, and lots about communities. When we got to this point, it was to be the leading housing provider in Gloucestershire. We've now got to this point, and the board is starting to say, okay, what does that mean in reality? How do we define that down? What is the unique selling point of Seven Vale? What is it? What's Seven Vale's purpose? Where can it exploit the opportunities? Where can it make itself more sustainable, really successful? And that discussion happened last week. That will enable us to start, well, that's the start of some project work, research work that's been doing to answer that question by February. And we can then start giving some clarity to our staff that actually this is the direction of travel. So we're on an upward curve. What was really pleasing from my perspective is that in my interview, Shirley said, okay, Tim, where do you think we are on this upward curve? So this is going on, this is, if you think about how a team's forming, so you've got the forming, you've got the storming, and then the norming, and then reforming and transforming. And we're on, I said, well, I think we're here. So we're on an upward curve, we're nowhere near the top, but we're going in the right trajectory. What was really pleasing, Shirley said, well, without breaking any confidences, 90% of the organisation is here as well. So very positive, very open. New people come in the organisation, reflect to me on a regular basis about what they think, how positive they think the organisation is. It's good to be involved. It's good to be reflective, and we should be singing from the rooftops around that. And so we've got a clear way forward, and we're coming up with a plan with the managers to come up with a stream, four or five streams of work that we need to do to take us forward. And as with life, we get lots of challenges thrown our way. We were a 5-person directors team up till last week, but ironically on this day, for personal reasons, Julie's decided to move on for the organisation. So again, we have to be able to adapt to that. And part of this cultural change is, and part of a successful organisation is, you have to be agile. And going through this process has made us being able to be agile. Yes, we have to be business-like, and we've got to grow. There's no point being a business if we don't grow. But we've got to have the right culture to do that. And if we do that, and we've got the board development, we've got an interim directors team in Julie's absence until we know where we're going as an organisation in February, and we've defined that, and we make sure that the team in place at that point will be fit for purpose for driving that forward. Board directors integration, there's some work going on around that at the moment. That's crucial for us. We've got to have this vision, this values and culture survey to check out how behaviours are underpinning the values. We're going to get some external validation through the Best Companies survey that's done by the Times 100. With all of that, this will only work if it's supported by an agile and able back office support team. So finance, IT, HR, and on the front end, the comms unit. We've got to make sure we get out of the old world into our new world. And so we're shaping that. So again, there's some skilling up of the organisation. But I think from that you can see that we've been through a massive change journey that will continue to change, continue to evolve. But I'm really, really optimistic, and I'm passionate that this organisation is going to press on forward and deliver what right the way back here, I believed it was underperforming and what it could deliver. I think we're now in a great position where we can go and make that difference. And from that, we can then give customer services. We can be more effective in our communities. And somebody asked me recently about how sustainable are we as an organisation? Are we commercial or are we social? Well, actually, we're here because we're a housing association. We have full social purpose. Being commercial is there to support being social. But we're not here. We don't share our profits or any surpluses with shareholders. It's about what can we do more effectively in our communities. Do we build more houses and house lots of people on the waiting list? Do we give better levels of service to our current customers, to their children? Are we more effective in the communities? And I think that's the massive challenge, but the massive opportunity for us in the future.